So the next condition, the next is a twist on Carnot, and that is where there's collusion. And again, the conditions are where a few dominant firms can coordinate and organize their output to benefit themselves at the expense of consumers. This will end up having lower quantity produced and a higher price to consumers. And this is called collusion. Collusion is prone to cheating. So we're going to look at two conditions here. First, if they move away from the Carnot toward collusion to maximize their individual profits, and then see the incentive that one firm would have to cheat, and why these are very delicate balances, and therefore they often do not stand up in competition. When we set a base case, we've seen this just previously, this is the Carnot equilibrium at the point where there's an intersection of the reaction functions for both firms 1 and 2, and that leads to an equilibrium. And that at that point of equilibrium, firm 1 and firm 2 have their respective isoprofit curves. Now, something very interesting can also happen. That's what we're going to look at as the incentive for collusion. So now you see that firm 1 could make more profit if there's a cut in production. But what happens to firm 2? Likewise, if there's a cut in production, they also will benefit. So although there's a Carnot equilibrium, there's also this more optimal point, if you will, for the two of them, where they can both be on better isoprofit curves. Notice that the green for firm 2 is closer to their monopoly position. So this is a superior isoprofit line for Q2. Likewise, this green for firm 1 is better than the Carnot equilibrium also. So they can make additional profit if they do this. Well, the point at which that occurs sits on this line here. This line represents the line that is the trade-off to get to monopoly quantities for firms 1 and 2. So you see that although there is a Carnot equilibrium based on the movements of the two parties, if they collude, they could actually both make more money. So that's the incentive for collusion, is that on the green lines, both firm 1 and firm 2 will be on higher isoprofit curves as long as they cooperate. So that's represented by this point, which is Q1 and Q2 under conditions of collusion. And you see it's different than this point, which is the quantity 1 and quantity 2, if they both reach the Carnot equilibrium. Now, what we see is that both are approaching the behavior of a monopoly, but they're acting in conjunction with each other to get to this point along this dotted line, showing the monopoly positions for both individually and then the trade-offs in between. Now, there's a problem here. The problem is that firms have incentive to cheat. And in that condition, then you make an agreement and then you immediately cheat on the agreement, and it's to your specific advantage at the expense of the other party. Let's look at how that works. So let's have Q2 collusion. And at that number, firm 1 could do something a little sneaky. What they could do is they could cheat. And notice that at that level of Q2, the profit for firm 1 could be enhanced again more by going to this point, where the Q2 collusion is this fixed line. And then the firm 1 can move to this point and cheat. And by doing so, again, move closer to their monopoly position and take advantage of the concession or the agreement by firm 2 and reach yet a better isoprofit line by cheating. Now, the person that loses here is firm 2, because firm 2 used to make this amount if the collusion stuck. But because of this move by firm 1, they're now going to have to react and end up here. And this is the point where they would end up. And notice that the green line, the isoprofit for firm 2, is now eroding, is going away. So there is an equilibrium, Carnot equilibrium. There's incentive to collude, where both firms, if they behave, can each make more money than the Carnot equilibrium. However, that introduces an incentive to cheat on either of the parties. We illustrated what would happen if firm 1 is a cheater, and firm 1 could make more money taking advantage of firm 2. In such case, firm 2 then loses out and their level of profitability will drop. So these are the dynamics, as mentioned, in oligopoly, which makes it quite interesting. So here we have three conditions on this one variation where we have an equilibrium, a collusion, and a cheating. And all of those have definite implications for the profitability of firm 1 and firm 2.